I never told my husband Jack that I made $130,000 a year as a senior software engineer. I kept separate accounts, lived modestly, and saved for our future while he struggled between jobs. We were happy, or so I thought. Then I needed emergency surgery for a tumor they found during a routine checkup. As I lay in the recovery room, my phone lit up with his message. Through my morphine haze, I read the words that shattered everything. I've filed for divorce. Taking the house and car, LOL. I couldn't even scream. Growing up in rural Pennsylvania shaped my relationship with money in ways I never fully understood until everything fell apart. My parents fought constantly about finances before their messy divorce when I was 14. Dad gambled away our savings while Mom worked 2 jobs to keep us afloat. The day he left, he cleared out what little remained in their joint account, leaving us with nothing but past due notices taped to our front door. Never let a man control your money, Blanche, Mom told me, as we ate ramen noodles for the 3rd night in a row. Keep something for yourself that nobody knows about. That lesson sank deep into my bones. Through high school, I worked every weekend and summer, squirreling away cash in a locked box hidden beneath my bedroom floorboard. When I earned a partial scholarship to Penn State for computer science, those savings helped cover what the scholarship didn't. That's where I met Jack Crawford. He was studying business administration, charismatic and ambitious, with that perfect smile that made my heart skip. Unlike me in my thrift store clothes and sensible haircut, Jack came from money. His father owned a regional construction company, and Jack drove a car that cost more than my entire college fund. But he had a sweetness to him, bringing me coffee during late-night study sessions, and never making me feel less than for my background. "We're going places together, Blanche," he'd say, mapping out our future on napkins at the campus coffee shop. "You and me, we'll show them all." After graduation, reality hit Jack hard. His business degree didn't immediately open doors the way he expected. His father offered him a position, but Jack refused, determined to make his own way. Meanwhile, my programming skills landed me an entry-level developer job at TechSphere, a growing software company in Pittsburgh. "It's just temporary," Jack said when I got the job offer, "until I find something at my level." We got married 3 years after college, in a modest ceremony that still strained our budget. Jack had cycled through 4 jobs by then, none lasting more than 10 months. He'd start enthusiastically, then grow frustrated when advancement didn't come quickly enough. My career, meanwhile, was thriving. Each project I completed led to more responsibility and, quietly, more money. When my salary hit $70,000 after a promotion to mid-level developer, I made a decision I didn't discuss with Jack. I opened a separate account at a different bank and had most of my paycheck deposited there. Our joint account received just enough to match what Jack contributed from his current job at an insurance company. "We need to watch our spending," I'd say when he wanted to upgrade our car or take expensive vacations. "The economy's uncertain." He'd sigh dramatically but ultimately agree. We lived in a modest 3-bedroom house in a decent neighborhood. Nothing flashy, nothing that would raise eyebrows at Jack's family gatherings, where success was measured by square footage and luxury brands. By our 5th anniversary, I'd been promoted to senior developer with a salary of $130,000. Jack never knew. He assumed I made maybe $60,000 at most. The rest went into investments, retirement accounts, and a substantial emergency fund. I wasn't being malicious. I was being cautious, protecting us both from an uncertain future. "Someday we'll have enough saved for you to start your own business," I told him on nights when rejection letters left him brooding. "We just need patience." In hindsight, I realized my secrecy bred a distance between us. Money talk made Jack defensive, so I avoided it entirely. We lived separate financial lives under the same roof, and the gap between us widened with every deposit I made into accounts he never knew existed. The day everything changed started like any other Tuesday. A routine physical had led to some concerns and additional tests. When the doctor called me into her office rather than giving results over the phone, I knew it wasn't good news. "We've found a tumor," Dr. Harris said gently. "We need to schedule surgery as soon as possible." I sat there nodding mechanically as she explained the procedure, prognosis, and recovery. All I could think was that I needed to call Jack. When I finally did from the hospital parking lot, his response wasn't what I expected. "Now?" "I'm in the middle of something important," he said, annoyance evident in his voice. "Can't you just schedule whatever they want and tell me later?" "It's a tumor, Jack. I need surgery this week." The silence lasted 3 beats too long. "Fine. Text me the details." As I hung up, a chill ran through me that had nothing to do with my diagnosis. Something in his voice sounded wrong, distant, in a way that went beyond mere inconvenience. I had no idea then that Jack had already set events in motion that would leave me fighting for more than just my health. The surgery lasted 4 hours. Dr. Harris later told me it went well. They removed the entire tumor, and though I'd need follow-up treatments, my prognosis was good. But when I first opened my eyes in the recovery room, groggy and disoriented, all I could focus on was the empty chair beside my bed. Where was Jack? A nurse named Heather checked my vital signs, her smile kind but somehow strained when I asked about visitors. "Just rest now," she said, adjusting my IV. "You've been through a lot." Hours passed. The anesthesia fog lifted gradually, replaced by sharper pain and clearer thoughts. Each time the door opened, I expected to see Jack rushing in with flowers, full of apologies for being late. The door opened and closed many times. Jack never appeared. By evening, I'd called his cell phone 6 times. Each call went straight to voicemail. A heavy knot of anxiety formed in my stomach, competing with the surgical pain. This wasn't like him, no matter how strained things had been lately. At 8:30, the door finally opened to reveal my best friend Taylor, her expression a complicated mix of relief and something darker. "Hey, Trooper," she said, setting a small overnight bag on the chair that should have held my husband. "How are you feeling?" "Where's Jack?" I asked immediately. Taylor busied herself arranging items from the bag: my toothbrush, a hairbrush, my favorite loose pajamas. "You need anything else from home? I can swing by tomorrow and pick up whatever you want." "Taylor," my voice cracked, "where is my husband?" She finally met my eyes, and what I saw there made my heart monitor spike. "Blanche, The sharp ping of my phone interrupted whatever she was about to say. With shaking hands, I reached for it on the side table. The message was from Jack. "I've filed for divorce. Taking the house and car, lol. Papers coming your way. Don't bother fighting it." The room seemed to tilt sideways. I heard Taylor saying something, felt her hand on my arm, but everything receded behind a roaring in my ears. "He can't be serious," I whispered, though the coldness of the message left little room for doubt. There must be some mistake. Taylor sat on the edge of my bed, her eyes filled with tears. "I didn't want to be the one to tell you. Especially not now." "Tell me what?" "He's been seeing someone else. For a while now, I think." The monitor beside me beeped faster as my pulse raced. A nurse poked her head in, frowned at the readout, and approached to check on me. "Miss Marshall, we need to keep your heart rate down," she said, professionally ignoring the tears now streaming down my face. "Can I get you something for anxiety?" I shook my head, trying to process too many betrayals at once. After the nurse left, Taylor filled in the gaps as gently as she could. Jack had been spotted around town with another woman for at least a month. When I scheduled my surgery, he apparently decided it was the perfect time to make his move. "There's something else," Taylor said, hesitation in every word. "When I went to your house to pick up your things, there was a woman there, with Jack. She was helping him pack up some of your stuff." The room spun again. "In my house? Already?" Taylor nodded miserably. "I'm so sorry, Blanche." As if the universe hadn't kicked me enough while I was down, A hospital administrator appeared the next morning with a clipboard and concerned expression. "Miss Marshall, there seems to be an issue with your emergency contact information. Mr. Crawford contacted us yesterday to have himself removed from your records." I stared at her, wondering if there was any bottom to this freefall. Later that day, as Taylor helped me to the bathroom, a shuffling, humiliating journey tethered to an IV pole, she reluctantly showed me what our mutual friend Diane had sent her. A social media post from the previous night. Jack at the Foundry, the upscale bar downtown, his arm around a slender blonde, both of them laughing into the camera. The caption read, "New beginnings." The date on the post was the same day as my surgery. I made it back to bed before the sobs tore through me, pulling painfully at my stitches. Taylor held my hand, murmuring comforts neither of us believed. How could he do this? I kept asking. How could anyone be so cruel? The answer arrived the next morning in the form of a courier with a thick envelope of legal papers. Jack was filing for divorce on grounds of abandonment and irreconcilable differences. He was claiming ownership of our house, since his income was the primary contribution to household expenses. Same for the car. He generously offered to let me keep my personal effects. The papers listed his legal representation as Hargrove and Williams, one of the most expensive firms in the city. A firm there was no way he could afford on his insurance company's salary. The final blow came when I discovered he had emptied our joint account, all $8,742 the same day as my surgery. I lay in my hospital bed, cut open in more ways than one, wondering how the man who had once brought me coffee during all night study sessions could become someone who would clean out our bank account while surgeons removed a tumor from my body. "Taylor," I said when she visited that evening, my voice steadier than I felt, "I need you to take me to the bank as soon as I'm discharged. There's something I need to check." She gave me a questioning look, but nodded. "Whatever you need." What I needed, I was beginning to realize, was to fight back. Jack thought I was weak and defenseless, lying in a hospital bed while he took everything. He had no idea what was coming. 3 days later, as the nurse reviewed my discharge instructions, my phone buzzed with a notification. With Taylor looking over my shoulder, I opened it to find another social media update that Diane had forwarded. Jack had changed his relationship status. He was no longer married to Blanche Marshall. He was engaged to someone named Amy Winters. The nurse must have seen something change in my face, because she paused in her recitation of wound care guidelines. "Are you feeling all right, Miss Marshall? You've gone quite pale." I looked up at her, a strange calm settling over me. "Actually, I feel better than I have in days. I finally know exactly what I need to do." "This can't be right," I said, staring at the house I'd called home for the past 4 years. Taylor had just driven me from the hospital, and instead of the relief I should have felt, I was confronting yet another shock. A large padlock secured the front door. Through the windows, I could see empty spaces where furniture had been removed. My gardening tools, normally arranged neatly on the porch, were gone. "I'll kill him," Taylor muttered beside me. Actual, literal murder. I leaned heavily on her arm, still weak from surgery, as we made our way around to the garage. There, in a crude pile, sat boxes labeled Blanche's stuff in Jack's handwriting. My clothes, books, and personal items had been hastily packed, many simply thrown in without care. "He packed up my life while I was having surgery," I said. The reality of it still hard to grasp. Taylor helped me back to her car. "You're staying with me until we figure this out." At Taylor's apartment, I sank onto her couch, exhaustion hitting me in waves. While she made tea, I scrolled through messages from concerned friends. Everyone had seen Jack's engagement announcement. Everyone had questions I couldn't answer. Diane called almost immediately after I texted her that I was out of the hospital. "Tell me everything," she said. "Nobody can believe what Jack's doing." "Join the club," I replied, wincing as I shifted to a more comfortable position. "Who is she, Diane?" This Amy person? Diane hesitated. You don't know? It's Amy Winters, Thomas Winters' daughter. The name hit me like a physical blow. Thomas Winters was the regional director at Pinnacle Insurance Jack's company. Amy was his only daughter, a fact Jack had mentioned more than once when discussing office politics. She's what, 24? I asked, remembering Jack describing her as the boss's spoiled princess. 26, Diane corrected. And apparently head over heels for your husband. Ex-husband, whatever. Over the next 2 days, through conversations with friends and my own social media investigating, the picture became clearer. Jack and Amy had been seen together at company functions for months. What had started as professional networking had evidently evolved, all while I worked long hours and saved for our future. Taylor brought home Chinese food that night, carefully selecting dishes that wouldn't upset my still sensitive system. As we ate, she hesitated before pulling out her phone. There's something you should see, she said, handing it to me. Seth saw them yesterday. Seth, Taylor's brother, had captured a photo of Jack and Amy outside an upscale jewelry store downtown. Her left hand featured a sizable diamond that certainly hadn't come from an insurance adjuster's salary. I checked our credit card statements, I said quietly. He's been spending thousands we don't have. Dinners, gifts, hotel rooms, going back 3 months. Taylor looked shocked. How did you not notice before? I set down my fork, appetite gone. He handles the credit card payments from our joint account. I transfer my share every month without looking at the statements. The irony wasn't lost on me. My own financial secrecy had created the perfect cover for his betrayal. The next morning, feeling slightly stronger, I decided to confront Jack directly. I called his cell phone repeatedly until he finally answered, his voice wary. What do you want, Blanche? I want to understand how you could do this, I said, struggling to keep my voice steady. You emptied our account the day of my surgery. You're claiming the house that we both paid for. You're engaged before we're even divorced. Who are you? His laugh was cold and unfamiliar. Who am I? That's rich coming from you. I'm someone who got tired of carrying dead weight. Do you know what it's like being married to a secretary who can barely contribute? Watching other men succeed while I'm stuck because my wife can't even marriedings. A secretary? I interrupted, genuinely confused. Jack, I'm a senior software engineer. Right, he sneered. Typing away in your little cubicle for what, $55,000 a year, while I had real opportunities slipping away because we couldn't afford the risk. A sudden clarity washed over me. All these years, he'd had no idea what I actually did or what I earned. I'd kept my promotions quiet to avoid his jealousy, and he'd filled in the blanks with his own assumptions. Jack, we need to talk in person. There are things you don't understand about our financial situation. There's nothing to discuss. My lawyer says I'm entitled to the house and car as the primary earner. If you want to avoid embarrassing yourself, sign the papers and move on. Amy's father can recommend excellent career counselors if you need help supporting yourself. The condescension in his voice ignited something fierce inside me. You have no idea what you're doing, Jack. Actually, I know exactly what I'm doing. Upgrading my life? He hung up. 2 days later, scrolling through news feeds I'd been avoiding, I saw it. A courthouse wedding announcement. Jack Crawford and Amy Winters had married in a civil ceremony. The photo showed them beaming outside the county clerk's office. Jack in a suit I'd bought him for job interviews, Amy clutching a small bouquet of roses. That's insane, Taylor said when I showed her. You're not even divorced yet. Technically, Pennsylvania has a waiting period for divorce, but not if one party claims abandonment and the other doesn't contest it, I explained, having spent the previous night researching divorce law. He's counting on me being too broken to fight. Later that afternoon, a thick envelope arrived from Hargrove and Williams. Inside was a letter explaining that due to my abandonment of the marital home during a trial separation, news to me, Jack had grounds for an expedited divorce. If I signed the enclosed papers, I could avoid a costly and embarrassing legal battle that would surely go in his favor given his superior financial position. I laughed for the first time in days, a sound that startled Taylor from the kitchen. "What's so funny?" I held up the letter. "They think I can't afford to fight this. Jack has convinced everyone, including his fancy lawyers, that I'm some struggling secretary while he's the breadwinner." Taylor sat beside me. "So what are you going to do?" I was about to answer when my phone rang with an unknown number. Thinking it might be the hospital with test results, I answered. The voice on the other end was breathless, panicked, and unmistakably Jack's. "Blanche? Thank God. We need to talk right now. It's an emergency." I let Jack's call go to voicemail after hearing the desperation in his voice. Whatever emergency he was facing could wait, just as I had waited in that hospital room. Over the next 2 hours, he called 17 more times. I silenced my phone and focused on my recovery exercises, the rhythmic movements helping to center my thoughts. Taylor watched me with a mixture of confusion and admiration. "Aren't you curious what he wants?" "Desperately," I admitted. "But he needs to understand how it feels to be ignored when you're vulnerable." By evening, my phone had accumulated 6 voicemails, all from Jack, each more urgent than the last. "Blanche, please call me back. I need to talk to you about the house. Something's happened. I don't understand what's going on. Call me. This is serious, Blanche. There are financial things I need to discuss with you immediately. Why didn't you tell me about the second mortgage? Amy's father is furious. Please call me back. I'm coming over to Taylor's. I know you're there. We need to talk tonight." The last one, received just as Taylor and I were finishing dinner, simply said, "I'm outside." Sure enough, a knock at the door followed seconds later. Taylor looked at me questioningly. I nodded, steeling myself. Jack stood in the hallway looking nothing like the confident man who had dismissed me on the phone days earlier. His hair was uncombed, his eyes bloodshot, his normally immaculate clothes wrinkled. "Thank God," he said when I appeared behind Taylor. "We need to talk." Taylor crossed her arms. "She just had surgery, Jack. She needs rest, not more of your drama." "This concerns her too," he insisted. "Please, Blanche, 5 minutes." Against my better judgment, I nodded. Taylor reluctantly stepped aside, whispering, "I'll be right in the kitchen if you need me." Jack paced the small living room, running his hands through his hair repeatedly. "The bank called me today. About our mortgage." I lowered myself carefully onto the couch. "And?" "They said we have a second mortgage I never signed for. $75,000. The payments are 2 months overdue." I kept my expression neutral. "That's interesting." His eyes narrowed. "Did you know about this? Did you take out a loan against our house without telling me?" "No, Jack. I never took out any loan without your knowledge." This was technically true. The second mortgage had been in place for years with both our signatures. I'd used it to consolidate some of Jack's earlier credit card debts, and he'd signed the paperwork without reading it, assuming it was just refinancing, as I'd vaguely explained. The monthly payments had always come from my secret account, until my hospitalization, when I'd missed 2 payments for the first time. "Well, somebody did," he snapped. "And now the bank is threatening foreclosure. That sounds like a problem for you and your new wife to solve." His face flushed with anger, then quickly shifted to something more calculating. "Blanche, be reasonable. This affects both of us. If there's something you're not telling me about our finances, now's the time." The audacity nearly took my breath away. "Are you serious right now? You divorced me while I was recovering from tumor surgery, married another woman days later, locked me out of my own home, and now you want financial advice?" "I know how this looks," he said, his voice softening to the persuasive tone I'd once found charming. "I made some hasty decisions. I was under a lot of pressure from Amy's family. They have expectations, connections I couldn't pass up." "So you married her for her family's money and connections," I stated flatly. He winced. "It's more complicated than that, but Yes, partly, and now everything's falling apart. Thomas got the bank notice at their house because Amy put her father's address on some forms. He's asking questions about my finances that I can't answer. How terrible for you. Jack knelt in front of me, his expression earnest. Blanche, I've known you for 10 years. You've always been the careful one with money. The responsible one, I think. I think maybe I made a mistake. For a brief, weak moment, my heart responded to the familiar sincerity in his eyes. Then I remembered the padlock on our front door, the boxes thrown carelessly in the garage, the empty chair beside my hospital bed. A mistake, I repeated. Is that what you call abandoning your wife during a medical crisis and marrying someone else? I can fix this, he said urgently. The divorce isn't finalized yet. The marriage to Amy, it was just a civil ceremony. It could be annulled. We could go back to how things were. The desperation in his voice told me everything I needed to know. This wasn't about regret or love. This was about money and reputation, the only things Jack had ever truly valued. Before I could respond, another knock came at the door. Taylor answered it to reveal a slender blonde woman I recognized from social media photos. Amy Winters, now Amy Crawford, stood trembling in the doorway, mascara streaking her flushed face. I knew I'd find you here, she said, glaring at Jack. With her. Jack jumped to his feet. Amy, I can explain. Blanche and I were discussing the house situation. Amy turned to me, her eyes hard despite the tears. Did he tell you he lost his job? That my father found out he lied about his position at the company? This was news to me. I looked at Jack, whose face had gone pale. Or that I'm pregnant? Did your husband, my husband, mention that part? The room seemed to tilt beneath me. Pregnant? Amy's hand went protectively to her stomach. 6 weeks. I told him the day before your surgery. That's why he finally filed for divorce, after months of promising he would. I turned to Jack, pieces clicking into place with sickening clarity. So that's why you were in the middle of something important when I called about my tumor. Jack looked frantically between us. Amy, let's discuss this at home. This isn't the place. Home, she snapped. You mean the house with the second mortgage that's about to be foreclosed on? The one you claimed was paid off except for a small primary mortgage? The one you said would be perfect for raising our child? Taylor, who had been watching this exchange with undisguised fascination, stepped forward. I think everyone needs to calm down. Blanche is recovering from major surgery, and stress isn't good for someone who's pregnant. Amy wiped at her tears, smearing her mascara further. He's been playing us both. My father warned me about men like Jack. I should have listened. Amy, please, Jack pleaded. Your father doesn't understand our situation. If you just let me explain to him about the house mix. Up. Mix? Up? She laughed bitterly. Is that what you call lying about owning a house outright when it has 2 mortgages and is heading for foreclosure? Is that what you call promising me a fresh start when you haven't even legally ended your first marriage? Is that what you call love? Jack's face hardened. You're being hysterical. This isn't good for the baby. Wrong move. Amy's expression transformed from hurt to fury in an instant. Don't you dare use my pregnancy to manipulate me. Not after everything you've done. I watched them argue, feeling strangely detached. 10 days ago, this scene would have shattered me. Now it merely confirmed what I should have realized years ago. Jack Crawford was a man who used people, discarding them when they no longer served his purposes, or when a better opportunity came along. Stop, I said quietly, but with enough force that both of them turned to me. Jack, you need to leave. Both of you do. I can't help you with whatever financial mess you've created. But the house he began is no longer your concern, I finished. Taylor, would you please show them out? I need to rest. As Taylor ushered the still arguing couple toward the door, Jack turned back to me with desperation in his eyes. This isn't over, Blanche. We need to talk about the accounts. Something in his phrasing caught my attention. Accounts? Plural? A flicker of confusion crossed his face. The joint accounts. The ones that are overdrawn now. The bank statements came to the house yesterday. Statements I never knew existed, Amy added bitterly. After they left, Taylor returned to find me on her laptop, logging into my bank accounts, the ones Jack never knew about. "What are you doing?" she asked. I turned the screen to show her the balances. My savings account with $115,000, my investment account with just over $200,000, my retirement fund already approaching $350,000. Taylor's eyes widened. Holy shit, Blanche. Jack always assumed I made around $55,000 as some kind of administrative assistant, I explained. I never corrected him. I've been a senior software engineer, making $130,000 for the past 2 years. Understanding dawned on her face. And he has no idea. None whatsoever, I confirmed. He thinks we're in financial trouble because I can't contribute enough. Meanwhile, I've been supporting us both through his job, hopping and overspending, all while saving for the future he constantly talked about. Taylor sat beside me, shaking her head in amazement. So what happens now? I closed the laptop with new resolve. Now I get a lawyer, a better one than Jack could ever afford, and I fight back. 3 days after the confrontation at Taylor's apartment, I sat in the polished waiting room of Hamilton and Associates, one of the city's premier family law firms. The receptionist had offered me water in an actual glass, not a paper cup, a small indicator of the firm's standing. "Miss Marshall?" A tall woman with silver, streaked dark hair appeared in the doorway. "I'm Danielle Hamilton. Please come in." I followed her to a corner office with floor 2 ceiling windows overlooking the downtown skyline. As I carefully lowered myself into the chair across from her desk, mindful of my still healing incision, I noted the degrees on her wall from Harvard Law and framed news articles highlighting her major cases. "Your assistant mentioned a complex divorce situation," she said, opening a leather portfolio. "Why don't you start at the beginning?" For the next 40 minutes, I detailed everything: my secret finances, Jack's betrayal during my surgery, his hasty remarriage to Amy, and the recent revelations about their financial troubles. Danielle listened without interruption, occasionally making notes. When I finished, she set down her pen and studied me with keen eyes. "In 22 years of practicing family law, I've seen a lot of bad behavior, Miss Marshall. Your husband's actions rank among the most callous." "Ex-husband," I corrected. "Or soon to be." She smiled slightly. "Indeed. Now, I have several questions about your financial situation." I provided her with documentation of all my accounts, investments, and the history of our home purchase. I explained how the mortgage payments worked, how I'd kept my actual income secret, and how Jack had emptied our joint account. "Here's where things get interesting," Danielle said, reviewing the paperwork. "According to these filings from Hargrove and Williams, Jack claims to be the primary income earner, contributing approximately $70,000 annually to household expenses, while stating that you contribute minimal income as an administrative assistant." "That's what he believes," I confirmed. I never corrected his assumption about my job. "And he's using this claim to justify taking the house and car?" I nodded. "Miss Marshall, do you realize the legal implications of your husband making demonstrably false statements in court filings? Perjury?" "Precisely." Her smile turned predatory. "Hargrove and Williams has quite a reputation to maintain. I doubt they'd appreciate their client providing false information that they then submitted to the court." Hope flickered within me for the first time in weeks. "So, we have a case?" "We have more than a case. We have leverage." Danielle leaned forward. "But I should warn you, this could get messy, especially with the complication of his new wife and her pregnancy." "I don't want to hurt Amy," I said truthfully. "She seems to be another victim in Jack's schemes." "Admirable, but remember that her family has resources that could complicate matters. Thomas Winters has considerable influence in this city." As if summoned by the mention of influential families, Danielle's assistant knocked and entered. "Sorry to interrupt, but there's a Mr. Crawford insisting on seeing Miss Marshall. He says it's urgent." Danielle raised an eyebrow at me. "Your husband has tracked you here already?" "Not Jack," the assistant clarified. "An older gentleman, George Crawford." I felt a jolt of surprise. "That's Jack's father." Danielle considered this. "Do you want to see him?" Curiosity won out over caution. "Yes." Minutes later, George Crawford entered the office. At 65, he retained the commanding presence that had built his construction company from nothing. His expression was grave as he shook my hand. "Blanche, thank you for seeing me." Danielle indicated he should sit. "I'm Miss Marshall's attorney. Anything said here should be considered part of her legal consultation." George nodded. "Understood. I'll be direct. My son has created a disaster, and I'm here to help clean it up not for his sake, but for Blanche's." This was unexpected. George and I had always been cordial, but never close. "I appreciate the sentiment, Mr. Crawford, but I'm not sure how you can help." "By giving you information." He placed a folder on Danielle's desk. "Evidence of Jack's pattern of financial manipulation that extends beyond your marriage." I exchanged glances with Danielle, who opened the folder and began reviewing its contents. "Jack has done this before," George continued, his voice heavy with disappointment, "using women for financial gain. His mother and I tried to correct this behavior when he was younger, but—" "He had a previous marriage?" I asked, stunned. "No, but a 2-year engagement to his college girlfriend, Melissa. He drained her inheritance before she discovered he was cheating with her roommate." George's expression darkened. "We made financial restitution to her family and thought he had learned his lesson. Obviously, we were wrong." Danielle looked up from the documents. "Mr. Crawford, this is extremely helpful information, but I have to ask, why are you providing this to us? He's your son." George's shoulders sagged slightly. "Because I raised him better than this. Because watching him abandon his wife during cancer surgery and then immediately marry another woman for her family's connections is a moral failure I can't ignore. Because Blanche deserves justice." "Cancer?" I interjected. "I didn't have cancer. It was a benign tumor." George looked confused. "That's not what Jack told us. He said you had terminal cancer and had requested a divorce to spare him from watching your decline. Said it was your idea to separate finances before your treatment." The room seemed to spin around me. "He told you I was dying? That I asked for the divorce?" "He gave that explanation when we questioned why he was suddenly engaged to Amy Winters while still technically married to you," George confirmed. "My wife was devastated for you. She wanted to visit, but Jack insisted you'd requested no contact from family during your treatment." The calculated cruelty of Jack's lies left me momentarily speechless. He hadn't just abandoned me, he'd created an elaborate fiction to cast himself as the victim while isolating me from potential support. Danielle was reviewing more documents from George's folder. "Mr. Crawford, these bank records show substantial transfers from your company to Jack's personal account over the past year. Are you aware of these?" George nodded grimly. "Loans he claimed were for investment in your joint future. Nearly $80,000 total, supposedly for a business venture you two were planning together." "I knew nothing about any business venture," I said, stunned by the scale of Jack's deception. "I suspected as much when I heard about the divorce," George replied. "That's why I had my accountant pull these records. You'll also find evidence that Jack was fired from Pinnacle 3 weeks ago before your surgery for embezzlement. Thomas Winters was keeping it quiet while they built their case. That's why he rushed to marry Amy," I realized. He needed the connection to her father to avoid prosecution. Danielle was already taking notes. "This changes our strategy considerably. Mr. Crawford, would you be willing to provide a formal statement regarding these matters?" "That's why I'm here." His eyes met mine, filled with genuine regret. "Blanche, I know this won't undo the hurt Jack has caused, but I want to make things right however I can. As the meeting continued, a plan began to take shape. With George's evidence, my financial documentation, and Danielle's legal expertise, we had the beginnings of a powerful case against Jack and his deceptive claims. When George left, promising to gather additional evidence from the family's records, Danielle turned to me with newfound determination. "We have court on Thursday morning, Judge Patricia Montgomery's courtroom." "Is that good or bad?" I asked. "Potentially very good. She has a particular dislike for financial dishonesty in divorce proceedings." Danielle closed her portfolio with a decisive snap. "Miss Marshall, I suggest you get some rest and continue your recovery. You're going to want to be present for what happens next." As I left her office, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. It was Amy. "We need to talk privately about Jack and what he's been hiding from both of us." The Montgomery County Courthouse loomed before me, its stone facade more intimidating than I remembered from jury duty years earlier. Taylor squeezed my arm supportively as we climbed the steps. "You've got this," she whispered. "Danielle is going to destroy him." Inside, the polished marble hallway echoed with footsteps and murmured conversations. I spotted Jack immediately, huddled with his attorney near the courtroom doors. He wore his most expensive suit and a practiced expression of wounded dignity, a look I now recognized as completely manufactured. Amy stood several feet away from him, accompanied by an older couple I assumed were her parents. Thomas Winter's resemblance to his daughter was striking, the same determined chin, the same analytical gaze now fixed coldly on Jack. My conversation with Amy 2 days earlier had been surprisingly civil. Over coffee at a quiet cafe far from our usual haunts, she'd shared her own discoveries about Jack's deceptions. "He told me you were a struggling administrative assistant who couldn't have children," she'd said, hands protectively curved around her their pregnancy. "That you'd agreed to divorce because you didn't want the family he desired." While telling his parents I had terminal cancer and wanted to spare him from watching me die, I'd added. We'd compared notes for nearly 2 hours, each revelation more damning than the last. Amy had already consulted with an annulment attorney, encouraged by her father who had apparently never trusted Jack. Now, as our eyes met across the courthouse hallway, Amy gave me a small nod of acknowledgement. Not quite friendship, but solidarity between two women who'd been manipulated by the same man. Danielle arrived with purposeful strides, her assistant trailing behind with a document-filled briefcase. "Good morning, Blanche. Are you ready?" "As I'll ever be." Jack noticed our arrival and attempted to approach, but Danielle smoothly intercepted him. "Mr. Crawford, all communication should go through counsel." His attorney, a harried-looking man from Hargrove and Williams, quickly joined them. I heard fragments of their intense whispered conversation, amended filing, serious allegations, best interests of all parties before the courtroom doors opened. Judge Patricia Montgomery's courtroom was smaller than I expected, wood, paneled, and formal. As we took our places, I noticed George Crawford slip in and sit at the back, his expression grim but resolved. Docket number 2024. FC 7291, Crawford v. Marshall, the clerk announced. Judge Montgomery, a woman in her 60s with shrewd eyes and no-nonsense demeanor, reviewed the file before her. "I understand there have been some last-minute filings in this case." "Yes, Your Honor." Danielle rose. "As counsel for the respondent, we've submitted evidence of significant factual inaccuracies in the petitioner's original filing, along with evidence of financial misconduct that directly affects the division of assets." Jack's attorney stood quickly. "Your Honor, we've only just received these allegations and haven't had adequate time to respond. We would request a continuance to properly address these matters." Mr. Daniels, according to the timestamp, these filings were submitted yesterday morning. Court rules require 24 hours, which has been provided. Judge Montgomery's tone left no room for argument. Furthermore, I've reviewed the amended filings and find the allegations concerning enough to proceed today. For the next 2 hours, the carefully constructed narrative Jack had created unraveled thread by thread. Danielle methodically presented evidence of my actual income and career, documentation of the mortgage payments from my separate accounts, and proof that Jack had known about my surgery schedule weeks in advance, yet had chosen that precise time to empty our joint account and file for divorce. Your Honor, Danielle continued, we have additional evidence of Mr. Crawford's pattern of financial deception that extends beyond his marriage to my client. Jack shifted uncomfortably as Danielle submitted the documents George had provided. His attorney appeared increasingly distressed, whispering urgently to Jack, who kept shaking his head in denial. Furthermore, Danielle continued, Mr. Crawford has made demonstrably false statements in his court filings regarding his income, employment status, and contributions to marital assets. We have documentation showing he was terminated from Pinnacle Insurance 3 weeks prior to filing for divorce, not for downsizing as he claimed, but for financial improprieties currently under investigation. Thomas Winters nodded grimly from his seat behind Amy, confirming this statement. Most egregiously, Your Honor. While abandoning his wife during emergency surgery and filing for divorce on grounds of abandonment, Mr. Crawford subsequently entered into a marriage with Amy Winters that appears to have been motivated primarily by financial considerations and an attempt to leverage her family's influence to avoid potential criminal charges. Judge Montgomery's expression grew increasingly severe as she reviewed the evidence. Mr. Daniels, does your client wish to respond to these allegations? Jack's attorney looked pained. Your Honor, in light of this new information, we request a brief recess to confer with our client. Granted. 20 minutes. As Jack and his attorney left for a conference room, Amy approached me hesitantly. Her father hovered protectively nearby. I didn't know any of this would happen when we got married, she said quietly. I truly believed you had left him, that you didn't want the life he was offering. I know, I assured her. Jack is exceptionally good at creating convincing fictions. Thomas Winters joined us, his expression stern but not unkind. Miss Marshall, I want to apologize for my company's failure to alert you to the situation with your husband's employment. Our legal department advised against contacting you while their investigation was ongoing. I understand, I said, though part of me wondered if a simple phone call might have spared us all considerable pain. When court resumed, Jack looked visibly shaken. His attorney addressed the judge with clear discomfort. Your Honor, in light of the evidence presented, my client wishes to withdraw his petition for division of assets as originally filed. We are prepared to accept a division that reflects Ms. Marshall's substantial contributions to the marriage. Judge Montgomery's eyes narrowed. Mr. Crawford, do you understand that the court takes very seriously the filing of false information in divorce proceedings? Jack stood, his confidence finally shattered. Yes, Your Honor. And are you aware that such actions could constitute perjury, which carries potential criminal penalties? Aye. Jack glanced desperately at his attorney. I may have misunderstood some financial details when filing my petition. Misunderstood. The judge's tone made the word sound like the lie it was. Mr. Crawford, this court has evidence that you systematically misrepresented your financial situation, abandoned your wife during a medical crisis, emptied joint accounts without consent, and entered into a subsequent marriage under questionable circumstances. Misunderstood seems inadequate. Jack's composure finally cracked. Everything was falling apart. I was going to lose my job. Blanche was always working, never home, always saying we couldn't afford things. Then Amy's father offered me a partnership track if I showed commitment to the company. Amy was interested in me, and when she told me she was pregnant, Jack, his attorney hissed, trying to stop the flood of admissions. But, Jack continued, his words rushing out in a desperate attempt at justification. I never meant to hurt anyone. I just needed to secure my future. Then I found out about Blanche's actual salary and all those secret accounts she'd been keeping from me for years. She was hoarding money while making me feel like a failure. She's not innocent in all this. The courtroom fell silent. Judge Montgomery looked at me, then back to Jack. Mr. Crawford, let me be clear. Even if your wife had secret accounts which she was legally entitled to maintain, that would not justify abandoning her during surgery, emptying joint accounts, filing demonstrably false statements with this court, or entering into a marriage under false pretenses. Her voice was steel. The fact that you attempt to equate these actions suggests a concerning lack of moral compass. By the time the hearing concluded 3 hours later, Judge Montgomery had issued several rulings. The divorce would proceed with an equitable division reflecting my contributions. Jack would have no claim to the house or car. His false statements would be referred to the district attorney's office for review, and a separate hearing would be scheduled regarding the potential annulment of his marriage to Amy. As we left the courtroom, I felt a complex mixture of vindication, grief, and overwhelming relief. Taylor hugged me tightly, while Danielle shook my hand with professional satisfaction. "That went even better than I'd hoped," she said. "Judge Montgomery rarely makes referrals to the DA." I watched Jack being confronted by Amy's parents across the hall, his posture deflated. The charismatic mask finally dropped to reveal the desperate, grasping man beneath. George Crawford approached me last, his expression somber. "I know nothing I say can undo what Jack has done, but I want you to know that his mother and I stand with you, not him. If there's anything you need during your recovery, please don't hesitate to ask." I thanked him sincerely, understanding the difficult position he was in, torn between parental love and moral clarity. As we walked down the courthouse steps into the bright afternoon sunlight, Taylor asked, "How do you feel?" I considered the question carefully, aware of the surgical scar still healing beneath my clothes, the emotional wounds still fresh, but also the unexpected strength I'd discovered in myself. "Like I'm finally awake," I answered, "and ready to rebuild. 1 year can change everything." Standing in the sunlit living room of my new house, a charming craftsman-style bungalow on the other side of town, I marveled at how thoroughly my life had transformed since that devastating text message in the hospital room. After the court hearing, things had moved quickly. The divorce was finalized with terms heavily in my favor. Jack faced charges for perjury and financial fraud, eventually accepting a plea deal that included restitution and community service. Amy's annulment proceeded without contest, and last I heard, she had moved back to her parents' home to prepare for single motherhood. I sold the house Jack and I had shared, unable to feel comfortable there after everything that had happened. The sale, combined with my savings, allowed me to purchase this place outright. No mortgage, no financial entanglements, just mine. Earth to Blanche, Taylor called from the kitchen, where she was arranging appetizers for the housewarming gathering. "Where did you go just now?" I smiled, joining her at the counter. "Just thinking about everything that's changed." "For the better," she said firmly, handing me a glass of sparkling water. "You know what today is, right? Thursday? It's exactly 1 year since your surgery." She clinked her glass against mine. 1 year of being tumor, free, and Jack, free. Both toxic growths successfully removed. I laughed, grateful as always for her unflinching perspective. When you put it that way. The doorbell rang, announcing the first guests. Within an hour, my new home was filled with friends who had supported me throughout the past year. Diane brought homemade bread and gossip about former colleagues. My parents drove in from Pennsylvania, my mother beaming with pride at my new beginning. Even George and Martha Crawford made a brief appearance, bringing a handcrafted wooden bookshelf as a housewarming gift. But the gathering wasn't just a celebration of my new home. It was also the official launch of Financial Freedom for Women, the nonprofit organization I had established 3 months earlier. Using a portion of my savings and working evenings and weekends beyond my regular job, I had created educational resources for women in financially vulnerable situations. The website looks amazing, Danielle commented, scrolling through the mobile version on her phone. We had stayed in touch after the divorce, her initial professional interest evolving into genuine friendship. The calculator tool, for hidden financial abuse, is particularly effective. That was Marcus's contribution, I said, glancing toward the tall, thoughtful man discussing local architecture with my father by the fireplace. Marcus Allen had entered my life 6 months after the divorce, when we both volunteered at a community financial literacy workshop. A widower who taught economics at the community college, he understood grief and rebuilding in ways few others could. Our friendship had developed slowly, cautiously, with a transparency about finances and feelings that felt revolutionary after my years with Jack. "He's good for you," Taylor observed, following my gaze. "And not just because of his programming skills." I smiled, neither confirming nor denying what was still new and tender between us. Trust came slowly after betrayal, but it did come. As evening approached, and guests began to depart, I found myself in a quiet moment, with my mother, in the backyard garden I was gradually restoring. "I was so worried about you last year," she admitted, gently touching a budding rosebush. "When you called from the hospital about Jack's message, I thought it might break you." "I thought so too," I admitted. "But it turns out I'm stronger than either of us knew." She squeezed my hand. "You always were. You just needed the chance to discover it." After the last guest departed, I settled on my porch swing, enjoying the peaceful evening. My phone buzzed with a text from an unfamiliar number. Curious, I opened it. "Congratulations on your new home and foundation. Amy had her baby last week, a girl named Lily. She's healthy and beautiful. I thought you should know, Thomas Winters." Attached was a photo of a tiny newborn with a shock of dark hair, Jack's hair. I stared at the innocent face, feeling a complex swirl of emotions. In another life, under different circumstances, this might have been my child. "Everything okay?" Marcus asked, joining me on the swing with 2 mugs of tea. I showed him the message and photo. Life is strange, isn't it? A year ago, I thought I'd lost everything. Now I have a new home, new purpose, new possibilities. And somewhere across town, Jack's daughter is just beginning her life. Marcus considered this thoughtfully. The ending of one story is often the beginning of another. I hope hers is happier than her father's. With you running that foundation, maybe girls like her will grow up better equipped to spot the Jack Crawfords of the world. We sat in comfortable silence as twilight deepened around us. The medical checkups had all been clear, no recurrence of the tumor that had inadvertently revealed Jack's true character. My financial situation was more secure than ever, with the foundation work bringing fulfillment beyond anything my corporate job had offered. Most importantly, I had learned to trust my own strength, to recognize my value beyond what anyone else, husband, employer, or friend might assign to me. The greatest gift of Jack's betrayal had been the discovery of my own resilience. In abandoning me at my most vulnerable moment, he had unwittingly forced me to find a power within myself I might never have otherwise recognized. "You know," I said finally, "I've been thinking about what to say at the Foundation's first workshop next month. And I think I'll tell them that security doesn't come from hiding who you are or what you have. It comes from knowing your worth so completely that no one can convince you to settle for less than you deserve." Marcus smiled, his eyes reflecting understanding beyond words. "I'd say that's a lesson worth sharing." As night fell completely, I looked up at the stars emerging above my new home, my new life. The path here had been painful, unexpected, and at times terrifying. But standing on the other side of that journey, I wouldn't change a single step. Sometimes you have to lose everything you thought you wanted to find what you truly need. Sometimes betrayal can be the beginning of the most authentic version of yourself. And sometimes, when someone tries to break you, they accidentally set you free. Has there been a time in your life when what initially seemed like a devastating loss turned out to be the beginning of something better? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. And if you found value in my journey, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share with someone who might need to hear that betrayal doesn't have to be the end of their story. It could be the beginning of their greatest strength. Thank you for listening, and remember, your worth isn't determined by how others treat you, but by how fiercely you stand up for yourself when it matters most.